Heartland Flags and Gifts presents Legends and Listeners with Scott Dochterman and Chad Leistikow. Fly 'em high and fly 'em proud. Find your flag at heartlandflags.com. Breaking down the Big Ten from the Channel Seed Studios, this is Iowa Everywhere.
Hello, Hawkeye fans, Big Ten fans, and Iowans everywhere. We are thrilled to have you with us for episode 3 of Legends and Listeners here on the Iowa Everywhere Network. I am your host, Chad Leistikow, longtime Iowa Hawkeyes columnist at the Des Moines Register, coming to you live today from the Channel Seed Studios. It is game week, and we've got a lot of meaty topics to dive into. Nobody I'd rather dive into them with than my good friend and rival on the Hawkeye beat, Scott Dochterman of The Athletic. Scott, week 0 was fine, but I feel like for me today, this is the first day of college football. We've got some cool games tonight, and the Hawkeyes play at 11:03 a.m. on Saturday.
I'm very excited, Chad. I think especially tonight. I mean, once you get into Big Ten football, then that's when my ears perk up and I'm really excited. I've missed the last few years where they've had week 0 games. I mean, Illinois has played a couple of them last year. You also had Northwestern and Nebraska over in Ireland. I'd love to see a week 0 game next year, and maybe we will. UCLA plays Hawaii, so it'll have a week 0 game most likely, and I'm sure they'll try to have one of their distance trips out of the way. But here we are tonight, Nebraska at Minnesota. It feels like a real kickoff day. And then, of course, Saturday at Kinnick Stadium, it'll definitely feel like it.
Yeah, I can't wait for tonight, to tune into that game. And it's a big one, honestly, for the Big Ten West. We'll find out some things. We will talk about the Big Ten later in the show. But just wanted to remind you, as always, Legends and Listeners is brought to you each week by Heartland Flags and Gifts. Hopefully you've already been supporting our friends over there and have your tailgating gear in hand or in your car. But there's never a bad time to load up on more. Heartland Flags and Gifts provides free shipping anywhere in the U.S., also delivers new products constantly, and has you covered with nearly every team, every sport, and every flag. Lots of NASCAR stuff for me. Visit our friends online at heartlandflags.com or in store at 3719 Southwest 9th Street in Des Moines. All right, Scott, we've got a few appetizer topics before digging into our main course, which is going to be really fun. But let's wet our whistles with more starting quarterback talk. Kirk Ferentz said last night on Good Timey Radio, we'll take it right up to game time, but we're expecting Cade McNamara to play right now. If he can't go, we'll go with Deacon. So, Scott, given what we know, everything that's been said, what we've kind of learned behind the scenes, how much do you predict we will see Cade McNamara on the field Saturday?
60-40. I think he's medically cleared to play. He has now practiced since Saturday. He did not practice for 2 weeks before that, so any kind of prediction of him playing is moot until he actually gets on the practice field, in my opinion. But it really, to me, is going to come down to, is Kirk Ferentz have faith that Cade McNamara will not hurt his leg by playing? Because if he re-injures it, in any kind of way, shape, or form, then you're looking at him possibly or probably not playing in Jack Trice Stadium, not playing Penn State, potentially Michigan State on down the road. Those games are of way more significance than Utah State, and I think Iowa will win that game comfortably either way. However, if they were to lose, it's not a bigger loss than those other games. So I think at some point I would go 60-40 that he plays. In a normal week, I would say that he would probably play. But given the fact that it's going to be in the 90s and he's still coming off this injury, Chad, I think he's probably more closer to 50-50 than actually probable or definitely will play. What do you think?
I mean, based on where things are trending, I think he'll probably give it a go. I definitely would be on the yes side. I was more leaning toward the no side, I would say, on Tuesday, based on even just what Cade said himself. He's like, I haven't really been doing all the practice. We'll see how it goes. And, this is an ongoing process. When we talked to Kirk Ferentz last week, Cade had not been on the practice field yet, and he has, and they, we're going to see how he responded. Kirk did say, he was medically cleared. However, when I was preparing to talk about this, Scott, I was thinking back to 2015. Remember CJ Beathard's, midsection injury or whatever you want to call it. Before the Northwestern game or during the Illinois game, and he toughed it out, played. But this is completely different from that, right? I mean, this is not a team that's 7-0, in the middle of the Big Ten season. This is a chance, he was, he could play through it then, but you want to play through something now. And I'm of the opinion is if he can't go full strength, I would not put Cade out there on Saturday, because you don't want to try to send him out there like, hey, don't get hurt. Any rush comes in, just go down. I mean, you can't do that kind of stuff. That's exactly what Kirk Ferentz said on Tuesday, that he didn't want Cade McNamara to be out there. So I think it's either he's out there full go, or he's not going to play.
You can't be indecisive in this sport. This sport is too deadly. There's too much injury that's associated with it. And half stepping is probably what got him in this position to begin with, because he was taken off running and he couldn't quite determine whether he wanted to slide or keep running. And then he kind of made a false step. And then that's what happened to his leg. And it's like when you see people pull up, or you see people, somebody doesn't think that the play's over, somebody thinks it is. That's where a lot of injuries take place. So in this situation, if you don't think, or if you're not capable of thinking that he's going to play and play effectively and play without any kind of fear, then don't play him. However, Cade McNamara is going to say, I can play. I'm going to play because I'm this dude who does that. And then I think Iowa's going to be, Kirk's going to come down to a decision with him and the medical staff. And again, you've got to be cautious if you're the coach, but you can't tell your player to be cautious, because if you do, then, especially when you're dealing with muscles, if you're dealing with things like ankles or backs or other shoulders, you can kind of tough it out, whatever, but you can't do that with muscles. You've got to be very cautious.
Well, and here's the last point on this is, like, anybody who said last week that they know for sure he's going to play, that's just not accurate, because he hadn't practiced. I had a source with direct knowledge of the medical situation tell me they were pretty sure he wasn't going to play based on the information they had. I had another source say, yeah, it's going to be really touch and go for the game. They're worried that he's not going to be able to play. Another source said, I'm 99% sure he's not going to play. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, with the information that we kind of had, it was probably like a 3-week type of injury. Cade's toughness, he's got a chance. So you just got to wait and see on these things. And even if Cade McNamara says to a teammate or a friend, hey, I'm going to play, 10 days ago, the call is still Kirk Ferentz's, and it should be. I mean, they've got to think about the big picture here. I guess where I kind of predict it probably goes, and again, this is just kind of listening to what Kirk said last night, and just knowing, that Cade has played through broken ribs before, broken vertebrae before. I think maybe they give him as long as they need to build a lead, ideally, and then take him out. And if it's a tough game, he's maybe play the whole thing. But I don't think he's going to be emergency type of thing, which Kirk said he would be open to, but I just can't imagine Kirk doing that. Anyway, you want to move on?
Just one last thought on that, Chad, and then we can move on, is that when this is the difference between opinion and reporting. You report, I had sources as well tell me that I just don't think he's going to play, that whether it's 99% sure that he's not going to play. You had the same thing, but we could have reported that. We didn't. I felt all along that I thought he was going to play, but I never would have reported that he was going to play, because that just to me is irresponsible, because projecting and predicting is different than reporting. And I think in this situation, you've got to be cautious. It's not an ankle. And even then, as you said, Chad, we go through this situation, things can change. Things change quickly. And I don't want to give anybody the false impression of one way or the other. So, yeah, I'm not going to predict it. And I think it's irresponsible to do so.
You had a nice piece on The Athletic this morning. I think it posted, right? Because surrounding Iowa offensive coordinator Brian Ferentz. Saturday marks the beginning of the drive for 325. My favorite national podcast is the College Football Inquirer with Dan Wetzel, Pat Forty, Ross Dellinger. Those guys are hilarious. They make me laugh.
Yeah.
They constantly talk about Iowa. And they had a huge segment on Brian Ferentz last night. So I know you talked to Brian this summer. What is kind of your view as we get set to launch, this drive for 325 points to save his job?
I think it's going to come down to, Chad, that everybody else cares except them. That Kirk Ferentz is not going to make this an issue. Brian Ferentz certainly isn't. The players, in talking to several of them the other day, Nico Regaini, who I really like anyway, he's really funny, mentioned that he's like, what are we going to do? Throw 4 Hail Marys? And then Mason Richmond said he didn't even know about it until May. And I think he was at the 4-walled relays at City High. And there was somebody working with like the sprinters. He was from Ankeny and was an Iowa State fan and came up to him talking smack about it and asking him if he knew about it. He's like, I didn't even know about it. And then all of a sudden he said he took great joy from that race because the sprinter didn't win. And he's like, he's like, that was the happiest day of the day was when they didn't win because of that. So I think this is a big deal for all of us, of course. And Gary Barta made it so by inserting it into the contract. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a talk about situation, but this is also Kirk Ferentz likes to thumb his nose or other things at people from time to time. And here's what I could see, Chad, is like, let's say next week at Ames and Iowa is winning 24-10, has the ball at the 3-yard line with 2 minutes left. No timeouts for Iowa State. I could see him just taking 3 straight knees, and then on 4th and 1, taking another one, even if it gives Iowa State the ball back there, just to say, we're not going to do this. And it would be hilarious. It would be a thumb your nose at everybody's situation, and we'd all be talking about it. And Pat Forty and Ross Dellinger and certainly Dan Wetzel will be talking about how, you may need those points at the end of the year. But overall, that's what I think is going to happen.
Well, there is no better time to remind folks that Circa Sports is the exclusive sports betting app of Iowa. Everywhere, Circa Sports is sports betting the way it should be, with the highest limits, lowest holds, and the best odds. Download the app today at the App Store or circasports.com. And the reason I mention it during this conversation, Scott, is because Circa has a prop on the Iowa over-under 25 points per game for the regular season only. It does not count the bowl game in their thing. So I guess they're going drive for 300 in that with minus 160 juice. So if you want to bet, you can bet, I think, a maximum of $1,000. So if you want to bet $800, you could win 500 if the over hits. And I think it's plus 140. I checked this morning for the under. So where do you think it lands, Scott? I mean, just as we get set to embark on this season, there's so many factors, right? I mean, does Cade stay healthy? Again, the stuff you talked about. Does Iowa try to run it up in any way, shape, or form? I don't think they do. Do you think they go over that 25? I'm not asking you to bet on it or recommend betting advice, but what do you think? Over or under 25 points per game this year?
I think over. I do. Here's some of the interesting numbers that get thrown out. Nobody really recognizes this. 2 of the top 10 scoring seasons in Iowa history were under Brian Ferentz. The 2020 team that averaged 31.8 points per game was 8th, and the one that averaged 31.2 in 2018 was 10th, all time in Iowa. Now, last year's was the worst since 2000. But over his first 4 years, they averaged 29 points a game. The last 2 have been rough, and there have been some reasons for that. We know them all. We don't even really need to go through them all. But I do think that they average somewhere in the neighborhood of 27 points per game. You look at the schedule. Last year, here's a really interesting fact. They played 7 of the top 14 defenses in the country last year, not even counting Iowa themselves. And that was in total defense. And of those 7 teams, they allowed a total of 16 games with 25 points per or more. So when you had a struggling, bad offense at Iowa, trying to do that against teams that rarely allowed 25 points a game anyway, that's a recipe for disaster. This year, you're not going to face the same type of defenses, and you're going to have you should have a much better offense. So, if Cade McNamara's out for the season and if the offensive line collapses, then we can reevaluate it. But I think they're in the 27 to 28 point range. I think this is a moot point. It's an interesting talking point, and it killed a day worth of story for me. But other than that, I think that's where I'm at. What about you, Chad? You're lower than 25?
No, I think they go over. I honestly don't think it'll be an issue this year as long as Cade is healthy. I guess I would say the two stats that I think will increase this year, and I guess we can maybe get into this in our next topic too a little bit, but they've been so bad the last 2 years in red zone touchdown percentage and third down conversions. So in other words, you're taking field goals instead of touchdowns, and you're getting yourself off the field quickly and not scoring points. So I think having a better running game / offensive line, having a better quarterback, a higher percentage quarterback should, and your tight ends. I mean, they had good tight ends last year too, but it didn't help. But should increase those numbers and thus the points. And that's why I feel like, I know we disagree a little bit on this. Like, I don't mind the 25 points per game stipulation that Barta put in. And I also, as I was thinking about this more, I think he maybe did that because he knew he was leaving and didn't want to kind of leave totally nothing. Beth gets in a position where she's all of a sudden, has the decision to fire Brian Ferentz or not. Right now it's cut and dry in a contract. So I frankly would have just had the points per game be higher. I mean, I don't think if you're going to set it at 25, it's still pretty low. That would rank very low in college football, but I get it. So if they go 7-6 this year and average 26, I doubt people are going to be too happy about the offense. So anyway,
no, they will not.
They go over. I think they go over.
There are a lot of numbers I think that are, to me, are more important. It sounds weird, but they're more important than the points, and because they lead to the points. And as you said, red zone inefficiency it's been a disaster, and that probably is the area where I think there's been the play calling has been an impact.
Yeah.
Last year against Illinois was really bad. Really questionable at best, but and then you look at completion percentage. I mean, they're 55% last year. They haven't hit 60% since Beathard in 15. Wide receiver catches that was an abomination. That was the worst they've had since 82. They only had 76 catches by wide receivers last year. And when you think back, Chad, in 2019, they had 169, which tied for the record for that position. So you're talking about, 93 fewer catches by a position group whose primary goal is to catch passes. That to me is just, and then you negate Sam Laporta's effectiveness because you have to have somebody out there who can win one-on-one matchups. And then you throw him out there, and it negated the fact that he could beat any linebacker or safety in a one-on-one situation. So, it's just all of this, their touchdown percentage was 124th in the red zone at 44.4%. They only threw the ball. And this one, I actually had to watch every game and that was a joy in itself, but I had to rewatch every game. They threw the ball to the goal line or into the end zone 3 times when they were inside the 10-yard line, 4 total from inside the 20. That's design. That's route. And it's also quarterback deciding where to throw it. But so 320 or drive for 325 or 300, I think they move a lot of those numbers upward.
For sure. Yeah. Charlie Jones, 110 catches on his own last year for Purdue, by the way. 76 for all of Iowa's wide receivers. If you just want to twist the knife a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. We're kind of going long here to the central question of today's show, which is going to be really fun. We talked about this Tuesday, and I've been thinking about it a lot. So let's get right to it. Scott, does Iowa have a team that can not only get to Indianapolis, but win on December 2nd? Now, we don't know the answers yet, but do they have a chance? I'll let you start.
I'm going to start out by saying I need to see growth in a couple of areas before I give them the puncher's chance to go there and compete. And it's too hard to predict a win because no matter how they get there, they could be 12-0 and they'll still be the underdog if they're playing Michigan or Ohio State. Maybe if it's Penn State because they had already beaten them by then. But frankly, they're going to be like at least a 7-point underdog if they're playing an 11-1 Ohio State or 11-1 Michigan. So do they have the type of team? Not today, but they might by late November. And to me, it comes down to really two position groups moving forward. Quarterback, obviously, Cade McNamara 2 years ago completed 64% of his passes. If he could be somewhere between at least over 60, that's one area that could help them get to that position and be competitive too. And I think probably the most important one of all, other than being accurate, is offensive line. It has to be better. It has to protect, but more importantly, it has to run the football because everything in Iowa's offense is predicated on, can you run outside slant? Can you run inside zone? Can you run counter? And last year they could not. 2 years ago, they could not, except when they decided, let's run behind Tyler Linderbaum. And now if they can run those plays with a running back who I think very highly of, then you get to Indianapolis, you have a puncher's chance. You have an elite defense probably at that point. You have the best special teams in the country. You have a quarterback who's experienced, who can complete passes. And if you can run the ball with effectiveness, yes, you can go there and punch somebody in the mouth and win. But if they can't do it, kind of the way it happened 2 years ago, no, you don't have. The other team's going to have more explosive playmakers than you. They've got NFL dudes, at wide receiver and other places. So you've got to be your best at what you do. So if the running game can take off, if the offensive line can dominate and protect, and if the quarterback can complete the makeable passes, yes, they can get there.
Yeah, I mean, definitely they can get there. And let's start with my thoughts initially here. And I got a few more specific thoughts later, but let's start with the offensive line because I mentioned this on our Hawk Central show last night, but for whatever reason, I was watching the Music City Bowl before bed the other night, and it dawned on me that the 5 guys that they started in that game are the 5 guys on the depth chart right now on the top line. So they brought in a Rusty Feth and Dajon Parker, but they still have the same 5 linemen that they had last year when they went 0 for 11 on third down against Kentucky and scored 7 offensive points on a short drive that started in Kentucky territory. So that just tells me that they are banking on development. That's what they've been saying this whole time. You can't microwave success, microwave experience. And, that line is all over the building. So that's what I'm really looking forward to tomorrow or Saturday is how much progress has this line taken? I mean, that was not, that was a Kentucky defense that wasn't outstanding by any means because it had been, whatever it was, the opt-outs, whatnot, injuries, they were down. So, and they could not run the ball in that game. I rewatched that game. That was ugly trying to run the football. Now that was Jennings Dunker's first start, I believe. He was a guard. Now he's a tackle. Connor Colby's now at right guard. Nick DeYoung now at left guard. We'll see how the rotations go on Saturday. But before I start believing that Iowa can be a contender here, that's the answer I need to see on Saturday as a starting point.
No question. The offensive line is what's going to carry this team to where it wants to go. And you look 2 years ago, they were able to kind of, spackle and tape and put things together that really made it happen. But what they need is a jolt of confidence because even Kentucky, they had to have opt-outs, Carlton Valentine being one of them, I think it was, and a few others, but they still were a representative unit. I think they were 12th in the country. So they were tough to run on, and Iowa didn't look the part. So what makes me think that they're going to be better now? other than just natural growth and maturity, well, you're kind of banking on that. But then the other part is this is where confidence comes in. They had no confidence last year. You could tell that they just were beaten down and they didn't look the part. Playing a team that was in the hundreds last year in rush defense, whether you measure it by yards per game or yards per carry, they were in the hundreds. So which makes you go, and then they only returned 5 starters on defense to go with it. They lost some players to the portal. That's where this Saturday starts it. Now, you're also going to have to weather some tough games that way too. Week 2 is not going to be easy for this team. Going to Ames against that defense, you've got to expect a tough game. Week 4 at Happy Valley, same thing. But can they gut through it? Can they learn? Can they grow to where the point where, in November, when they're playing Northwestern and Rutgers, and can they be an ascending unit? That's where you want to be anyway. So I think they're going to have some success on Saturday. It's going to make them feel better. They're going to have some adversity in Ames. They're going to have some success against Western Michigan, probably adversity in Happy Valley. And then you just got to figure out how do you grow from that. And that to me is probably where they're at. I mean, this is where Kirk Ferentz stakes his reputation, his offensive line. He doesn't brag about himself very much, but he's like, I do know something about this. So, and so I kind of buy that with him.
Yeah. And did you see yesterday, I think it was yesterday, Mel Kiper's early big board, Logan Jones, the number 4 center on Mel Kiper's board already for 2024.
Wow.
So he's a believer in a guy that struggled last year in a lot of ways. So that tells you the physical gifts that he has. I am in concert with you on the get some momentum part, because last year you think about South Dakota State, that was a good team.
Yeah.
And you made the comment to me in the parking lot the other day, like that South Dakota State team, could beat this Utah State team by 3 touchdowns. So, maybe, but yeah,
probably.
And then you face an Iowa State team that ended up having the 4th best defense in the country. Again, you're completely shorthanded. Then you get the 6.5-hour Nevada game, which had no continuity. That's the one game you thought, oh, we can finally see something, get a break here. And then it's like choppy, just get to the finish line, just hope you count a victory. And then all of a sudden it's at Rutgers, and then all of a sudden it's Michigan comes to town, and you're in the grind and you never get better. So that's what I think this Saturday is a great springboard for that. Scott, I think the only way Iowa could win in Indy is, yes, offensive line play takes a big jump. Quarterback play, healthy. I think Cade will be fine. I don't think he's going to be first team all Big Ten necessarily, but I think he will be just what Iowa needs as long as he's healthy. I feel good at tight end. I feel good at running back. We'll see on receiver. I'm upbeat about that. But what I look at, Scott, are the potential matchups. Can you match up against the 3 teams they might face? Ohio State. These are all 3 different types of teams. Ohio State, do you have the dudes in the secondary? I think they do. We saw it in Columbus last year until the offense could constantly put Iowa in bad positions. They had a plan for Ohio State's offense, and it was a dang good plan. They did not score a touchdown on 9 of their first 10 drives. That's Ohio State in Columbus. So I'm optimistic there, but we need to see development at the second corner spot. We need to see Cooper DeJean stay healthy. We need to see Xavier Wampa, frankly, be the 5-star that he is. And, we'll see about linebackers, Nick Jackson, Jay Higgins. Drop off from Jack Campbell, no doubt. But to me, that's the big Ohio State matchup. Can you compete with their elite wide receivers? And I think that's possible. And then Michigan, obviously a totally different team, a trench type team. Can you compete in the trenches? We've kind of talked about that, Scott. I mean, last year they were okay, but you just couldn't offensively, you just couldn't do enough. So again, it comes back to the line. And then Penn State, it's more to me just that's always a good, that would be the ideal matchup probably, but they've got a dang good defense. So and it comes down to your offense. So it's either, So I don't know. Like, I feel like Iowa has the potential in all three to at least match up and rely on those special teams to maybe eke out a close win in some of those games. Any thoughts on potential matchups if Iowa were to get to Indy?
Whenever I look at Penn State, Iowa, I think of it kind of like the old movie and book, The Outsiders. It's kind of like the Socs versus the Greasers. You've got just two different levels of, caliber, whether athletes, recruits, expectations to some ways. And then once you start rolling around in the mud, anything can happen. And that's generally what happens with these guys. And so, yes, I think Iowa is more than capable of beating Penn State. It's won the last two. It's going to be an incredibly insane environment out there because they hate Iowa now after what happened 2 years ago, and especially after the fans and booing and stuff. So you can get to Indianapolis and it might, flip a coin. Michigan, I think, matches up with Iowa well, like they did 2 years ago to an extent. In that game, though, things got carried away because Iowa couldn't do anything offensively at all. They tried, they had a great trick play that didn't work out. And then they inexplicably gave up a couple of big plays. And, Michigan was kind of a steamroller at that time of year. And trying to stop Aiden Hutchinson was a nightmare. Oof. Ohio State is a really tough one. Marvin Harrison and Amiga Buka is just, you've got to be playing really well. I think for me, the only way you really match up with them capably is if you have, a very healthy secondary. Because if you have a weak spot, they're going to exploit. And Cade Stover is a really good tight end too. We don't know about Kyle McCord, but he's going to have big numbers throughout the course of the year, or Devin Brown, whoever ends up being the starter by then at that point of the season. But they'd have to do all the right things. I think defensive line is going to be very impactful for this team. I think it dominates every game going into the Big Ten championship. And that includes Wisconsin, Penn State, that the defensive line will dictate the tempo in every single game. It's that good. But, people are going to get some balls their way. I think in Indianapolis right now, I would say no. I got to see it. But I think I see a path to having that kind of a successful season.
Yeah, when I was talking to Jim Lachey, Luke's dad, over in Indy, who of course is the Ohio State broadcaster, and they're concerned about their offensive tackles over there. So that could be a potential, potential edge for Iowa, maybe even with, I love Deontay Craig. I think Joe Evans is poised for maybe his best year yet. Hopefully he can stay healthy. He has been healthy, but you never know with 6-year seniors. It seems like they're starting to break down a little bit. And then I'm excited about Max Llewellyn, Brian Allen, Ethan Herkett. They got some dudes there. And then we know we love Y.A. Black and Aaron Graves alongside. Logan Lee is like the most underappreciated Hawkeye out there. He's so good. When I was watching that Music City Bowl, he's running down guys. He just makes some. I remember the 2021 game in Ames. He was making plays on Brock Purdy.
Yeah,
like really changed that game. Remember the long Torrey Taylor punt, and then Logan Lee had the tackle for loss, and all of a sudden that game really started to turn in Iowa's favor. Anyway, I'm just saying I'm with you on the D line.
Yeah,
and we'll see. It'll be fun. Be a fun story to report.
Yeah.
And I think if they go, let's think about this, Scott. Let's just, it's preseason, right? Mm-hmm. If Iowa can go 11-1, obviously very long shot chance they do. But if they do, then they go to that Big Ten title game, I think, with a win and in playoff, most likely, unless the other conferences are so far and away better than Big Ten, because you're going to beat one of the probably top 2 or 3 teams in the country, or have a chance to beat, I should say. So, if you want to really think big, think 11-1 and take your shot in Indy.
Yeah. I think they're capable of it. When you look each and every game and you say, can Iowa win this game? And the ones that stand out are the ones you'd expect. Penn State on the road is going to be a challenge, no question. Incredible environment. They've got great players. As good of a defense as Iowa has. So you're going to be challenged. That's where the offensive line is going to be most challenged, at least in the early goings. Wisconsin, I'm just not sure what we're going to get. This whole experiment of changing the system could be exactly what the program needs to vault it from being kind of stagnant and good at times to, hey, they're competitive on a national level, or it could take them right back into the toilet, and they could be in a really bad spot for a while, and nobody lets you up, especially in the new look Big Ten with 4 new teams coming in. It's not like Minnesota, Iowa, and Illinois will say, oh, come on, let's wait for Wisconsin to catch up, so that just to me is, it's really unpredictable, with what Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin will roll this weekend against Buffalo, but they got a lot of unpredictability there. But Minnesota, you're going to get their best shot. That's what they're going to be gunning for Iowa. They're coming off a bye. I actually have them. I did my game by games, and I had them beating Iowa just because of a lot of that factor. Iowa coming off a game against Wisconsin, then playing Minnesota at home. So I could see that being a rough one, but by and large, this team's got a conducive schedule to get where it wants to go. It has to build the right way. And, we, more than any other program in America, because, Kirk Ferentz has been there 1,000 years, that we look at this and we compare different seasons. And this has a similar vibe to what I saw in 15 to 09. When the teams were just kind of, even 08 to some extent, where they felt like they were ready to break through, that they were close, that they had that mindset, chip on their shoulder a little bit, but really a motivated team. I see a very motivated team, very motivated program. The stuff with the drive for 325 to the gambling, just, kind of I see a lot here with this program to work with mentally. You look at the offense, Chad, every single player has something to prove, and every single one of them does. And so I think they're gonna come out and they're gonna play hard and they're gonna be very productive most of the year.
Well, we are a Hawkeye show, but we're also a Big Ten show. So let's start by talking about some of these Big Ten games, Scott. And as we mentioned at the top of our Legends and Listeners show, it's Nebraska, Minnesota tonight, 7:00 on Fox. Huskers are a 7-point underdog, and after 92,000 fans jammed into Memorial Stadium to watch a women's volleyball match last night, do you think Nebraska gets back-to-back memorable nights as a fan base?
Boy, this is a coin flip. I took Nebraska in the points in one podcast, but I'm not so sure they're the better team. I think Minnesota is the better team because we know what Minnesota is. Now Minnesota's losing it. It's the only team that actually has a homegrown quarterback in the West this year, and Ethan Kaliakmanis. But they don't have Mo Ibrahim anymore. They do have Chris Ottman-Bell for the 40th straight year. He's older. He's older than we are. I like Minnesota to win this game, but I don't like them to cover. I think it's going to be close. I think Nebraska is going to play really hard. I don't know that they have the dudes yet, but I think they will eventually.
I have no great feel on this game. I'm glad I didn't have to put them in my picks for Saturday's paper, but I'm just excited to watch it. Like Jeff Sims, the Matt Rule era, it's tough. New coach, first game. There's a lot of excitement, but there's a lot of stuff to iron out. They're switching to a 3-3-5. Nebraska is. That'll be different. And Minnesota's just kind of like they're still the same program. I mean, they want to run the ball. They want to be physical up front. We'll see how they lost a lot of good linemen though. So we'll see how it goes. I'm not sold on their quarterback. They usually have a pretty good defense under PJ Fleck, and Sriracha is back now, right?
No, he's now at
Rutgers, right?
Rutgers, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we'll see what they do in offense. I don't know. It's an intriguing team to me. I know they're kind of a dark horse in the West, but we'll see. The other games, you mentioned Wisconsin, Buffalo. I can't wait to see what that air raid looks like. And then my dark horse team in the West, Illinois, has a really interesting matchup Saturday night against Toledo. I'm excited that maybe I can watch some of that game after we're done with our writing, because that should be a good one. Toledo is one of the best Group of 5 teams, MAC favorite. And then Brett Bielema's team has to go to Kansas week 2. So That's another intriguing team to me is Illinois. I think they could be a sleeper in the West for sure. What other games you kind of got your eye on, Scott, or any of those games in particular?
Yeah, probably those games that you mentioned. I mean, first of all, tonight I'm very excited, to have an opportunity to watch a Big Ten West game like this in prime time. Kind of running down everybody in the West. It's just there's some sort of flaw or there's some sort of issue that prevents me from embracing it. I mean, Illinois is building a lot of momentum, and Brett Bielema has done a really nice job, but they have to replace some dudes in the secondary. I mean, Devin Witherspoon, Jartavius Martin, Quan Martin, and Sidney Brown. Then on the offensive side, Chase Brown, some offensive linemen. They've got a lot of people to replace. Now their schedule is advantageous. It's probably the easiest, if you will, of the Western teams because their only crossover of the big three is Penn State at home the week before Iowa plays them. So I like a lot of aspects of them, but this is not an easy opener, as you said. It's in prime time against Toledo. Toledo's probably a MAC champ this year, so I think this could be a real challenge. Purdue against Fresno State, defending Big Ten West champion. I think they lose outright. And they spot 3.5 too to go along with it. This is going to be a really wild ride, I think, for Ryan Walters because he wants to incorporate all those things that made him bat his eyes when he was a defensive coordinator at Illinois, but that doesn't really fit with what the style of play is. Hudson Card will try to do something. Their defense, they lost guys to the portal that really will hurt them. So I'm not really there with them yet. And then Sunday, we got Northwestern at Rutgers.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. What do you think about that game? I kind of think Northwestern maybe is upset special there. They're 6.5-point underdogs. I know everyone thinks they're terrible, but I think Rutgers' quarterback is not good. And Rutgers lost its punter. So I don't know. I feel like, I don't believe much in Northwestern's roster. I mean, heck, they lost a first-round tackle, and so they lost some good players off a 1-11 team.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I'm interested to see that one too.
Yeah,
that's like a CBS game, right? So
it's CBS. It's like, here you go. Thanks.
Welcome to the Big Ten.
Yeah, well, although they do get Ohio State, Indiana on Saturday as well.
Yeah,
but I'll probably have to disagree with you there. I think Rutgers probably rolls them pretty decisively.
Okay, all right.
I need to see Northwestern compete before I think it can actually compete. And I think they lost too many players. The Fitzgerald situation, I could see them going over this year and looking like Rutgers did a few years ago before Schiano got there. I could see them losing every game by 4 touchdowns or so.
Sure. Well, that's another fun thing to watch this weekend. How bad is Northwestern, and will that game in Wrigley Field benefit Brian Ferentz's drive for 325 on November 4th? See, it all comes full circle. And Iowa plays Rutgers too later this year, so you can really get a lot of Hawkeye information this weekend watching the Big Ten.
Absolutely. Well, it would be great to see a team score a lot in Wrigley Field late in October, early November.
November, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's good. That's fun to think about. Anyway, what are you working on, Scott? I know we talked about the Brian Ferentz piece. Anything exciting? Are you ready to just kind of kick your heels up till game day?
At this point, just now I'm kind of done with this week and looking ahead. I mean, next week's Cyhawk, and there's always storylines from that. I'm kind of waiting to see what's going to happen with gambling. Tomorrow's Fry Fest. I haven't decided if I want to go. I mean, that. To be a true Iowan, you got to complain about traffic and parking. And so I'll probably say that intersection's a nightmare. So that may impact whether or not I go there just to say hi to anybody. But, we'll get ready for Cyhawk week and get ready for what's about to happen. How about you, Chad?
Yeah, I filed my last thing already, so I'm just ready to watch some football tonight. Got a little yard work to do first, but you got to squeeze that in the fall, right? But I had a piece that posted this morning on Deontay Vines. Gave up alcohol. dove into his veggies. He's really embraced a healthy lifestyle, and he's healthy. And that's Kirk Ferentz keeps bringing his name up at receiver. I'm really excited to see what Deontay Vines brings to this team this year, because we've heard flashes in practice, and can he be a guy this year for the Hawkeyes? He said he's been working mostly at the X. So could he be, Iowa needs an answer at the X, right? They haven't had one really since Brandon Smith. So, maybe Deontay Vines is that guy. Nico Regaini, healthy. And I'm so excited to see Seth Anderson and Caleb Brown at receiver. It's just a revamped, revitalized receiver room. I don't know how good they're going to be, but it's exciting to think about the receiver room right now compared to where it was a year ago. And that's so that story is about hawkcentral.com. Opener is always fun, right? You get to see who's starting. You get to see which freshmen are out there. Who's on the kickoff team? I mean, there's so much. Who's going to return kicks? I hope it's Caleb Brown. I hope it is, just for fun, And
on kickoffs,
kickoffs, yeah. I mean, we know Cooper DeJean will be punts, but I don't know. Just lots to learn on Saturday.
Most definitely, and it's going to be really hot. So be ready for that. And the traffic's going to be a disaster. Don't avoid exit 242 at all costs.
Okay. All right. We got it.
The Hayden Fryway, go by the Hayden Fryway, pick another lane. But overall, I think I'm excited. I'm hopeful that the offense works better than last year's 166-yard effort. 2 safeties, 1 field goal in week 1. That I knew I had like this sinking feeling like, oh my God, this is going to be a bad year, offensively.
And it was.
It was rough, but no, I'm hopeful that, things go swimmingly and we enter Cyhawk week with lots of fun storylines. And because Lord knows, Chad, we've had, over the last year or so, we've had so many rougher type storylines and controversial, and it'd be nice just to write about football, and it'd be nice to write about fun football. So hopefully we get there for a little while rather than to drive for 325 or gambling and all these other issues.
Exactly. Well, that was a great show, Scott. Thank you for doing this with me, and I guess I'll see you Saturday.
Yeah, I can't wait, Chad. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Never enough time, but we did put our first game week edition of Legends and Listeners into the books. So we will join you all every Thursday. The plan is right now, 11 a.m. from the Channel Seed Studios during the football season. For Scott Dochterman, this is Chad Leistikow saying, enjoy your Swarm beers, hydrate on Saturday, and join us next week here on Iowa Everywhere.